Good evening, good afternoon, and good night. Hello, everyone. Well, everybody must know that working at the offshore oil rig paying you very high salary. But that high salary didn't just come from nowhere, just not without risk, of course. So, in today's video, we will explore the major risks that offshore workers usually facing, the protective equipment they usually use, and the first aid action of common accident there, and maybe a little bit contents and the using of the type of first aid kit. And hello everyone, welcome to this written sessions of workplace safety and offshore oil rigs. My name is Raditya Zaki Maulana. Enjoy your video. Offshore oil rigs are some of the most challenging and very hazardous workplace in the world. This is not just because a very common workplace or just because there are very some injuries or something like that. This is because they are very isolated and surrounded by the sea. And also accident can escalate quickly in there. That's why safety there isn't just a rule. In there, it's the matter of their survival. So, let's begin with the main categories of the risk. Well, the categories of the risk there is very much, but we will just go with the main one. Okay, the first one is a fire and explosions. The second one is the falling from very high place. The third one is machinery accidents, the chemical exposure, and the last one is environmental hazards. Let's go with the first one again. Fire and the explosion risk. This is one of the greatest dangers offshore workers facing. Fire and explosions. Flammable gases and hydrocarbon are everywhere there, and a single spark there can trigger a very big disaster. If you want to know what accident like that happening is, you can Google the incidents of Piper Alpha disaster. That's how devastating these events can be. The fire and explosions in the offshore oil rigs. The next one is falling hazards or fall hazards. Falls are another major risk in there. Workers usually operating on very elevated platforms, cranes, and very slippery decks. So without proper fall prevention system there, even just falling in you think very safe place there can be very fatal. The next one, all machinery hazards. Offshore rigs in there is offshore oil rigs very are very relying on the heavy machinery. So with that heavy machinery, crushing, entanglement, and impact injuries are very common if the safety procedures aren't followed. So that lockout and tagout system are very critical to prevent these accidents during maintenance or during working with that machinery. Next one is chemical exposure. Workers are also very exposed to material there, from just a drilling of fluids to clean from drilling fluids to just very simple cleaning agents, and even toxic gases like hydrogen sulfide. That can be dangerous for them. So that's why respiratory protections and proper handling procedure are very essential there. And also the last one, but not least, of course, weather and environmental risk. The environmental itself is hazarding. I mean, come on, you're in the middle of the sea, high winds, storm, and of course the sea itself is rough. Making daily operation in there is very, very dangerous. Even evacuation by helicopter can be very, very risky, or even cannot be do at all because if there's a bad weather there. So, to protect against these hazards, usually workers rely on personal protective equipment, or in short, PPE. From the head to the face, and from the head and face, hard hats and shields is used to go against falling objects, while a goggles or a face shield, or both of them, is from protecting from chemical flashes and flying debris around. The next one is hearing and respiratory. Noise noise levels on oil rigs are very extreme. Well, of course extreme because there is very heavy machinery there. So earplugs or earmuff is used or often used to prevent hearing loss there. Respirators are also very vital because there is harmful gases around there and vapor and vapors around. The next one is body and hand. Flame resistant clothing is a very standard thing there, protecting workers from fire and arc flashes. Gloves are usually chosen on the test. So yeah, there's various gloves they have in there, whether it's to resist the cut or resisting a cut or resisting a burns or maybe just the one that resisting a chemical exposure. The next one is feet and fall protections. Steel toe boots is protecting against crush, injuries, or punctures in there. And for those that working at height, a very high place like the crane one, is the harness. It's very life-saving equipment for them. And the last one, but not least of course also, is high visibility clothing. Ensures worker can be seen especially in low lights or at nights or during emergencies. It's very simple but very very powerful safety measures. Well, despite all of that precautions, accidents still can happen, right? So, the most common offshore oil rigs injuries is including various of those like burns, fractures, cuts, eye injuries, hypothermia, drowning, unconsciousness, and very much more to be honest with you, but that's all we need to know, the one that's very, very important. So, this is how we respond to it. The burns are cooled with water and covered with sterile dressings. The fractures one are immobilized with splints. The cuts need to be cleaned and bandaged after applying a little bit pressure there. Eyes exposed that to a chemical need to be flushed with water for at least like 15 minutes. Of course, sterile water, of course, right? The unconsciousness worker one, we check their airway, breathing, and circulation and place them in the recovery position if breathing. And for the hyperthermia or after drowning, we remove the wet clothing, warm the person, and monitor their vital sign. So to handle this emergency, rigs also equipped with various type of first aid kits. One of them is Type B first aid kits. This type include trauma dressings, burn supplies, eye wash, CPR, masks, tourniquets, antiseptics, bandages, splints, gloves, biohazard bags, and emergency blanket. And to use this first aid kit, we need to follow a procedure. Well, the procedure, of course, is just straightforward. The first one is ensuring the scene is safe. Second, calling for help. Third, wear gloves or personal protective equipment. And then apply the first aid kit, whether that's stopping a bleeding, immobilizing an injury, or performing CPR. And finally, document, and very importantly, document the incident and then restock the kit immediately after use because you don't know when another's accidents might happen, right? So, well, that's all for me. And to close this, remember, the safety there is a survival, not just something you need to obey. By identifying the risk, using PPE correctly, applying first aid effectively, and maintaining readiness, they protect, or we protect there, not just ourselves or themselves, but also the entire crew. Thank you for your time, and see you in the next video.